Hello everyone, and welcome to our introductory episode of the world of Dogmen. We will be talking about the different varieties of Dogmen and also the myths and misnomers about the Dogmen. The different types, the ones that shapeshift, the ones that are solid, ones that are short, tall, ancient, new, all of it. However, this is the only episode you will be seeing on our YouTube. The rest of these episodes will be going to our Patreon along with the world of Sasquatch. We feel some of the stuff that we'll be talking about belongs more in that arena versus the YouTube arena. You can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/thelifting. You can subscribe to $10 a month and see all of these episodes. Episode 8 of World of Sasquatch is going to be the last one you'll see on there of that. And there are a variety of other episodes, talk with the elementals, talk with the galactics, some galactic history, a lot of the lectures we did in Japan, all of that on there. And there's going to be a lot more stuff. We want to expand that exponentially over the next year or so. So you are going to see a lot of stuff appear on there that you won't see on the YouTube. You'll still see our show, The Lifting, and all the other things that are on there currently. People's sessions that let me post them, all of that. However, all this other specialty material you're going to see on the Patreon. So, let's see, somebody's already messing with my throat here to try to get me to not talk. So, let's see here. There are a group of dogmen here. If people heard a more recent Galactic Interstellar Council, this same group of dogmen came through on there, but there are far more of them now. Different colors, different sizes. And the one that came through on that Interstellar Council, his name is Kodo, I believe. Isaac keeps lovingly calling him Cujo. And these dogmen don't even blink an eye or bat an eye, they just ignore him. So
we have to fight from saying Cujo because Isaac is...
Yeah, because he's saying it. I keep wanting to slip up and saying Cujo constantly. So thanks to him. Mm-hmm. And they're just ignoring. They're just paying attention to us. They're not ignoring. And there's something in my throat here that's trying to get me to stop talking. But all right. Kudo, you want to say your piece for this introduction episode of the World of Dogmen? And can you do something with my throat here? There's something there. Alright, that'll be good enough for this. I'll keep those on. Okay, Kudo? Or Kodo? I'm not sure which one. I keep wanting to say Cujo now. Thank you, Isaac. He just went, the name is Kodo, okay. No, they find it funny. They're just ignoring him. Okay. The name is indeed Kodo. I am what you would refer to as a dog man. From the dog star system, you would say, or the Sirius system, or Canis Major. There are different varieties of our people, far more than you are well aware. The ones that are purported to have started our lines did indeed do so. The Antiqua, or you would call them the regal dogmen, or the Anubis people. However, the Antiqua morphed and adapted. After they came here, they created what you would call werewolves in order to help guard portals and doorways. That is their version of events. However, we have a slightly different outlook. We are indeed Antiqua. However, we are a bit more werewolfish looking, as you would say. The larger muscles and the larger cranial structure and size. Everywhere else, it is because we adapted to your magnetic fields and your energies. Some of us went feral after the times of Atlantis. And yes, we were indeed there. We were one of the factions, the many factions on Atlantis. There are some of us that still use the ancient Antiquan and Atlantean technologies. However, some of us do not know how to rebuild it if it were broken. This is what we wish to undo, the de-evolution of our people. Some are violent, and some have been created in labs. You see, your governmental, military, and militaristic structures have gained our DNA and the DNA of those you call shape-shifting werewolves and use them in laboratories. This is where you get the stories of variations of werewolf beings as soldiers. It is aliens, you would say, that showed them the way to this. But I digress, because I know this is an introduction. My people existed as the Antiqua. Then, when we came here, we began to adapt, either de-evolve because of the harvester intrusions after other races had to leave this system, or we adapted by gaining greater muscles. Some of the dogmen that you see today are mixtures of different groups. Antiqua originals, let's just say, guarding certain doorways, and various other species guard doorways as well, not just them, even though they are famous for it. There are small, you would say, midget-like dogmen. Some are hostile, like some of your dog species are. Some are playful, like your dog species, that have the same animal-like mentality. Others are the children of ours that look like these other races. And some are what you would say is hyper-intelligent and telepathic, but yet they are still small. They all look very much alike, if not alike, so it is hard to tell the difference. Some of the small ones have gone down in your mythology as headless demons and ghouls. This is not so. However, the drawings depict people without heads, or beings without heads, and the face is further down. And this is very much true because they have virtually no neck. Very much like some of your Sasquatch races. And this leads me to the rivalry between Sasquatch and ourselves. Yes, did that occur? And yes, does sometimes this still occur with some of the two races' more devolved kinds? Yes. However, the ones that have relearned who they are and the ones that already have known who they are, like the Anakam kind and our kind, have brokered a peace together and worked together. It is the more animalistic of our kind and the more arrogant of our kinds that battle still. Sometimes, though, defense is needed on either end. And this is what humans usually see us battling over. Did we have a long-standing rivalry through history with the forest people? Indeed we did, yes. But as I've said, this is long over, except for those that still wish to fight and continue violence. But I digress in this. We have a much broader perspective than what has been told to you by the Antiqua about our existence. Yes, did they bring DNA to this world and create workers and create portal guardians here because of their dwindling population? Indeed. But I will say this: the DNA also spread into different areas by the Antiqua in order to create different variations. Yes, the Anunnaki are responsible for this as well, and that the Antiqua people at one point were captured by said dark Anunnaki and made to do their bidding and serve and create some of these familiars. This is why sometimes Anubis is seen as dark. Also, in your history, there is the legend of Saint Christopher about the Dogmen guiding people across a bridge. This depicts our kind. It is your Catholic Church that wanted to do away with the dog face or the jackal face. This was one of our people guiding somebody across a portal doorway. This is how it was, and the Church wished to morph that away from different ideals, such as communication with our kind. It is your reptilian kind that wishes to cut communications with ours, or have you cut communications with ours. This was the reasoning for the change. They wanted to make you think we were evil. And also, did this cause frustrations amongst our kind? Yes. And it did not help that some of your troll kind are made with our DNA. The Antiqua, the earlier versions, are indeed responsible for this action. These are another form of what you would call small dogmen, but they also have lizard DNA amongst them. There are several varieties, as I've said. The Antiqua, to start. The Canis, which are the intergalactic salesmen. The smaller varieties of dogmen, as I've explained. The bioengineered versions of your cabal. The shape-shifting werewolf kind, from human to wolf, which are also utilized by the cabal, along with vampiric beings, the fangs and all. There are dogmen feral kind, that are more instinctual, that are taller, as werewolf looking. And there are the equivalent to the Anakam, which are my kind. We are Antiqua, but we are different than they began. We do not have the, you would say, bean Polish look. We are more muscular and have adapted to your gravity, your magnetic fields, and your solar winds. However, we fit what you would expect as the description. There are also more violent versions of ourselves that at one point were placed in strategic positions around your planet for what your kind would call an end days scenario. So people thinking that the sightings of our people have to do with the end days, very much like the Sasquatch forest people kind, they are reading an old playbook, you would say. They are actually bringing in old information of what was. What is very different. We wish a dialogue with your kind now. However, there are versions of ourselves, as I've said, that are not too keen on this. Our kind has an aversion to being touched or being pandered to or being praised. Also, we are using your data node system, Akashic data node system, to give upgrades to the, you would consider the lesser of our kind in mentality. The Sasquatch kind are doing this as well to theirs, to make sure that our kind can relearn the old ways, even prior to Atlantis. You see, on Atlantis, some of the crystal technologies that we use today were misused, and the knowledge was stripped from us over a period of time. But when some of our kind began to wander into areas where this technology still existed, we began to regain ourselves, myself included. I was left here by the Antiqua many centuries ago, and I have been here to tutor the others, or the feral kind of my kind, ever since, as are more like myself. At this point in your recording, I am now open to questions.
Well, thank you, and that was really nice introduction and explanation of how broad the category is of Dogmen. I always like to kind of go back to the beginning. I do find it interesting, of course, that obviously if you had stayed on this, if you in particular had stayed on the Cirrus dog system, your look would be different because of the not needing obviously to adapt like you have had to adapt here. So if I heard you correctly, you would have more of an Antiqua look if you would have stayed there, the traditional what we think of as Antiqua look.
Indeed, the gravity and solar winds and magnetic fields are very different, vastly different in the Cirrus system. The species that now inhabit that area actually looked very different than they did when they were in this system. This also explains Sirian star beings' blue pigmentation to their skin. This also explains the Antiqua look. When we were, as you say, left behind, we did indeed start to adapt. It would be also very different if we ended up on your Martian plateau as well. We would have a vastly different look. Earth is very unique in this. You have a vast amount, an array amount of magnetic fields and an array of energies here that also cause some of our kind to become slightly more violent and some of our kind to become more muscular as a result.
So when before the fall of Atlantis, when you guys were here with many, many other groups who had established colonies, okay, and you came in at that moment in time there, because the I'm making an assumption, you can correct me, because the manipulation had not really begun. There weren't too many different varieties of dogmen during that period of time. Is that a correct statement?
That is most correct, yes, because during the times of Atlantis there were only a couple of different kinds of dogmen. The Canis came later. They were genetically engineered by the Antiqua to be their children, as were we. However, they took a completely different route and went into, as you would say, business for themselves. Mm-hmm. Our kind look very much the way we did on Atlantis when the Antiqua, as we are as well, brought us here and we adapted to your energy fields. But it is much more vast in an array of variety than it was then.
So many, and again, many people don't know that they haven't heard our conversations about how things were, Lemuria, Atlantis, how the groups were, even land masses and different things being brought in, because there was I don't know how this information was known really, but there was communication, there was a thought process that there were going to be challenging times on Earth, and how could different races who wanted to, they would bring something in that would really be of service at this current present moment, that were brought in a planning mode of how do we assist them come out of these hard times. I'm curious, with the Antiqua, I know part of their purpose was guarding portals that were coming in and out of here. Be prepared to have enough people to be able to do that, because the portals would be being used. So I am just curious about the thought process. You guys as colonists coming in, what was your feeling of what you were going to have to do, or what were you prepared for, and did your vision of what you thought was going to occur happen? What did it go easier? Is it much worse? What's your perspective?
It actually turned out much worse than what was prepared, but the original Antiqua strain knew something else was occurring. They were actually getting telepathic communications from your Dark Ones or your Dark Anunnaki long before the colonization began. It is my belief, and my people's beliefs now, that they knew something was coming and helped to form the cosmic strings that eventually befell Atlantis, along with some other groupings. This was actually a far worse scenario than we had accounted for. Yes, did we colonize parts of your world then and set up magic as you would see it to be? Yes, but we also fought to keep it against those that would destroy it. We knew that the women of Atlantis were communicating with Dark Ones. We also knew that your perception later on of Anubis being the god of the underworld was also only a half-truth. He was guarding a portal that also carried with it some negative dimensional connotations, as we would say. Some of those bridges led to different time frames and different areas where these harvesters, you would call them, held sovereigns. This is a bit of information people do not know about Anubis. Also, the fact that he was Michael also makes sense because he himself allowed some of these things to come to fruition. Michael was a multifaceted being in his heyday and was able to take multiple expressions and change his form with both holography and with his genetics. He chose to exist amongst our kind as Anubis and guide our people through a particular hard time we had in our own history. After this, when the earth became overrun, he became worse than he was in your depicted history. In this, the same began on Atlantis simultaneously, then in Egypt in different time frames. That is, you know the story at this point. But we were there to witness all of these things that befell the planet, and now we witness the result as people are coming out of this fall.
And so just to again reiterate to people who may or may not realize this, you brought up Michael and how multifaceted he is and how he is able again to take parts of himself, change his form, go over here. And again, there was much benevolence from him, working with different things, but as well, as we've said before, many beings who were involved in these types of energies also had a susceptibility, and many of them may have been a part of doing things that actually would not be looked upon kindly now. Many beings have come out of it, and some actually never did come out of it. It's a very complicated story. So, he's not the only multifaceted being who has made himself and come into histories and this, that, and the other, in not only in the human race, but obviously in other races as well, where he's helped and he's kind of hindered both during this whole enormous history that we actually have. But he's not the only one. And so for you all then, let's just talk again, let's just stick with your particular race because you've been here since it all. We'll talk about more specifics on how others de-evolve, but I want to give people kind of this personal history, because you come in, you know you're going to come in, you're going to help things, and then you kind of see it all go bad. But my question is, when you came in, your colonies, when they came in, what did your family structure look like? What was life amongst your people? Were you very close? Did you just go off and do different things? What's your social life?
Our social lives were very much like your own. However, like your dog and wolf here, we did travel in groups and packs. This began to change over a period of time as we had to become lone wolves, as you would say, to guard different areas, but we still exist in colony packs, very much like your forest people, and we actually huddle together in different pack areas underground. If some of your kind would travel into the deepest, darkest caves, you would see groups of our people huddled in different places within the caves, very much like alcoves or beds. You would see our kind in these same beds and in these same alcoves. The children of our kind, as I've said, look very much like the other midget or smaller versions. However, there are different color variations in the hair. The child versions are more of like a, how you would say like a down feather would be for a bird, like a fluff, you would say. It was very much like that on the Antigua homeworld, where the children would have a very soft hair, but only they were thinner and they resembled more like one of your stuffed animals in that respect. So to answer your question, the family structures on both sides are pretty much the same.
Okay, and many races, feel kind of a bit abandoned when this really started to go bad. I'm curious about, the thought process of what was going through, and also your group. Did you have the telepathy? Could you keep in contact even though you were being lone? Could you still keep in contact with others via telepathy and stuff?
Indeed, some of us could, yes. Like you're very much like how your dogs and cats can do here and speak through emotional telepathy. We could do the same, even some of our de-evolved brethren, but now we fully telepath with people in the verbal and emotional respects. But even across vast distances, we were never alone.
Okay. But did you feel alone? Did you go through that? I mean, how did the negativity affect you guys?
Yes, we did indeed feel alone. We got separated from our packs. This is why some dogmen are seen just aimlessly wandering. These are the more de-evolved of our kind that are more instinctual, and these are the ones that cause problems for humans because they have been separated from those quantum entanglements that make up our packs. They are more, as you would say, depressed and lonely, so they act out, and they're more instinctual. These are the type of our brethren we have been looking for to bring back into the fold.
And so, did you, I hope I didn't misunderstand even the Sasquatch, but in the process of some de-evolving, they actually had certain lines that I think were I don't want to use the word more pure, okay, because I don't know the right word to use, but they stayed with the genetics and married and had children within the same solid line. And so if that occurs, I'm assuming there's, unless again you get, like you're saying, you get so separated, it starts to really play on you, that you don't necessarily de-evolve if you're staying within the same solid genetic line. Is that a true statement?
Not exactly. There are lines that have mixed with lizard lines, and also there are hybridizations between forest people DNAs and dog people DNAs, but those were forced genetic hybridizations. In the case of de-evolving, even if you are within the same grouping but are separated from, you can enter a more instinctual way of being if the energy fields are not quite right to the compatibility of more of a enlightened way of thinking, like it was in Earth's past, where our kind began to de-evolve because the energies around were beginning to de-evolve. You see, we adapt very quickly usually to energy fields, but we also have the ability to link up to those said fields, very much like when the Earth was corrupted back in the days of the Harvester invasion. This is also what began to de-evolve some of our kind, along with the Viking giants and some of your Sasquatch people.
So the different looks of without de-evolution. Okay, so this is without. So I guess you can think of the Sirius star system and all of the different cousins. So like I would assume the ones that are traveling around, the ones that like to trade. Would you consider them, and were they back there also on Sirius when you were back on that area? Were you like cousins to one another in similarity to genetics? Is that how that was back then?
Yes, indeed. We are cousins to each other even now. They have a slightly different look. You would see them more like yourselves, with more of a human visage but a pushed-in face, but with a slight longer snout. We have the classic longer wolf snout than them, but by genetics, we are cousins to each other even today.
So I just am saying that because I just want to reiterate there were definitely different versions, cousins in genetics before the manipulation started going on, and those particular races who were cousins then, pretty much all of them still exist now, correct?
Correct, in
Okay.
different varying states of, as you would say, enlightenment or awareness. This is something we are striving to correct. However, the independent group in all of this would be the Canis. They just wish to do their own thing.
Right. And they enjoy trade, and that's what they are focused on, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go back, because again, you mentioned, and many people may not realize this, that the Anubis-looking type of dogmen, that regal dogmen, although they had a purpose of being portal guardians, and again, I'm making the assumption, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we're not just talking portals here on Earth. Were they responsible for helping to maintain the entire portal system? Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, from their viewpoint, that was their job, very much like the Heimdall of your Norse mythology guarding the Bifrost. It is very much the same job along the same portal pathways that interacted with both the Cirrus system and your own system in the times of Maldek. So they've always considered this to be their job, even though other beings have picked up the slack, you would say. They would say that they are the ones with the, you would call, birthright to do so. This is how they view their position.
And they actually went through a period of time, like we were saying, that their race was dwindling, that they just were just not reproducing and not having enough children. And but my understanding, and I guess I'm asking you to validate, because I want to make sure that we heard correctly, is that that has changed, and they are, the race is coming back, and they are gathering numbers and seem to be more in a more healthy state. Is that true?
Indeed, this is true. The population of the Antiqua was indeed dwindling, and they got to a state where they could genetically engineer others of their kind, and this is where the variations all originated from. Yes, but their society found a way out of that dark night of the soul, you would say, and their genetic memory began to kick out variations of the programming in which the Dark Anunnaki placed on them, you see. Their extinction was not by nature. It was by the choice of the domineering beings that they foolishly invited in, very much like your Ra group did so long ago. They invited in what they thought were benevolent friends. They wished to help those around them. But in return, they got a dwindling in their population, very much like what's happened in some of your programs where this has been mentioned, where depletion of population was wrought throughout their populace, and only a third of their people survived this, very much like in your Great Flood, with the stories of Enki and Enlil causing the Great Flood. The same happened to the Antiquan people, and the ones that were captured were used as puppets, very much like your Ra group. It was a very similar situation, but their race survives.
Okay, and one of the things that we've talked about in general is the fact that I'm going to talk about humans now. That we're a soul, a piece of our greater self. That there is every soul here. I always say their higher self. I don't know the correct words, but that's how I explain it. Is like this vast library. They've had so many different experiences and everything. Huge library. Can't shove all of that energetics into a human skin suit for this experience. So a piece comes in. And when you are at that greater level, you can choose, and I'm asking for validation. You could choose to say, you know what, I think I want to hang out with the group from the Cirrus dog system. I think I'd like to go have some lifetimes with them, and is it possible then for those souls to go in and incarnate, be birthed through an Antiqua or whatever, just like a baby is born here, but their original soul template is not necessarily antipodal, but they're experiencing their life, their world. Is that an accurate depiction?
Yes and no. There are indeed higher selves of yours. However, when you are in the current present moment as you are now, do not view yourselves as two. View yourselves as only one in the current present moment, just like in those other current present moments that exist all simultaneously. It is not many, it is one. One being in what you would consider a multitude of time frames. This is hard to explain given your people's propensity to view things on a linear timeline. Think quantum, think spherical. Think all of these expressions are happening at once and then whittling down to what you would funnel or see in the current present moment. However, it's all those expressions that are coming to a close because your soul has already learned the codes it needed to learn for those to culminate at this point in your history.
So again, and so I'm glad you brought up codes or codexes, because that was part of the point of the conversation. When you go out and a different, again, this is the current present moment, I agree. And I also agree one being, I'm just trying to say my goal was to say you're more than what you currently think you are. You're much, much greater, and you are tethered and a part of something greater, which is yourself, actually. Because I always thought, one of the interesting ways about coping in life now is like you always want to go back to yourself, your own personal library of yourself. You can't bring everything in, but how quickly can I check out a book to bring in what I need to bring in right now to deal with whatever is going on in my life? And I say that because I do feel that people that are walking around, they may have a lot of thoughts about either a Dogman or a Sasquatch or something, and it may be because at some point in time they actually experienced life within those different groups, and so they have certain codes, certain codexes that are a part of their own library of those experiences. And that's part of the goal, in my understanding, of the whole unity that, we've experienced so much even about each other by being each other, in a sense, that there is a unity of being able to understand and these different races, the propensity to want to get along, a lot of it because of just the personal experiences that a soul has had over eons of lives. Would you agree in a statement like that that's the codexes and different things, it's really a unity issue?
Yes, indeed. There is a reason for this that has occurred, given the fact that your world was bifurcated and split in many different areas through time and space. Also, the universe suffered as a result, and these codexes were needed to regain what was lost. We knew even then, our souls knew even then, that your world was the place that was this seed that would grow along the nexus point and restore the fabric of the universe. This is why there are beings out there that don't understand what you are going through here and do not understand the emotional states and the energies and the wars and the battles. They do not understand this, but they wish to understand, because this is something that they have lost because creation itself changed around them, given the fractures that existed in the old Orion wars. This is our viewpoint. This may not be the viewpoint of other beings out there. This is how our people have recorded this history taking place. This is also why all these codexes existed, yet not only from your universe, but a plethora of different universes and omniverses that you would say crave these codes in some cases. In other cases, it is just a mere propensity and longing to learn from the experiences. So they send a member of their societies within your planetary structures to deliver these codes, to create the codexes that erupt from the nexus points.
So that again, so this is why so many different people, you know, they hear about a different race, they hear about something, and there's a little bit of being drawn to it. You know, you have to say, well, maybe you're either actually from, or you experience some lifetimes there. There is an actual familiarity with all these different potential beings that you feel really heartfelt, let's say, drawn to, and so you just don't think it's just a crush. There could be something really a lot more to it, and just be okay that there are many races, and you yourself could have been many different things to bring in all these different experiences to understand better. I find it interesting that you said as well, and I'm going to go right back to you and your experiences now, that, you know, part of your purpose was to help the ones of your race that had kind of de-evolved. I know you just said you were on the lookout for anyone that's been so estranged that you can bring them back into the lineage, but those as well that de-evolution that may even be a little bit more challenging, you know, to help them on the road of regaining themselves. My curiosity is, you know, it was the same thing with the Sasquatch. You know, they had a problem occasionally where if they showed up to a de-evolved grouping, you know, they all of a sudden were having a problem with being seen as a god, or being worked by their own, that didn't understand what was going on. So I'm curious about your experiences with your own. Do you find at times you have the similar problem that the Sasquatch had, or how are you accepted with these other groups?
We did indeed have the same identical problems, not only with the propensity of violence from some of our kind, but the propensity for some of them to see us as gods. You see, they re-entered more of a primal state of being, and they began to see other versions of us that knew about, say, molecular cellular solid abilities, or knew about telepathy as gods, very much like your kind views Jesus Christ or Buddha. It is very similar in our people. The way we handled it was we told them not to kneel to us or not to see us as gods. We would show them the way. We would end up showing them more about themselves than they ever wanted to admit about themselves. This is what some of your guides do with your own kind that worship them, you see. Not only the bad kind masquerading, but the good kind are trying to get you up off your knees and get you to stand in the same sunlight and the same starlight as the rest of them. This is what we do for our kind. This is what the forest people do for their kind.
So right now, because, you know, you're, unless I'm mistaken, your introduction to us, your particular group, is like current, because really you just made yourself known within the last week or so. I think I am curious, the beings that we have been seeing, and have they been more of the ones, besides the Canis who are out there, but the ones here, have they been more of the ones that you would refer to as a little bit de-evolved then? Is that what mostly humans are running into right now?
Indeed, there are many that are in an instinctual way of being, and there are ones that are more on your evolutionary level mentality. Very much like you have violence amongst your people, so do my people that are at that stage. There are some that are very close in your evolutionary mental and physical states. However, they are a bit more strong than your kind, so therefore the confrontations between my kind and yours have not ended well for the humans, because the humans are much smaller and not as muscular as my kind, or that version of my kind. However, they are also getting annoyed at humans entering their colony areas with weapons, guns, and the propensity to kill. And this is also what is triggering some of these dogmen. Now, other ones lure humans out there in order to do them wrong. Yes, this has also happened. They use their power of telepathy, or, as you would say, glamoring them into a particular zone where they could hunt them like a pack This is not going to be tolerated by my kind very much longer. There are also the troublemakers that also try to run humans out of an area by destroying structures, stealing farm animals, and hurting people. This is not going to be tolerated at all for very much longer. We are attempting to corral these different groups and make sure they do not do your kind harm, because your kind have the ability also to do us harm with some of the more advanced weaponry that you have. This also leads me to some of your genetic weaponry. There are types of our people out there purported to have, you would say, a bulletproof vest integrated into their genetics. And yes, this was an adaptation that was formed over a period of time when our people clashed with your people, with the guns and the cannons and the rocketry. But your cabal institutions and your military-industrial complex institutions have used this to form different types of dogmen that have these capabilities in place so that they can have their, you would say, transformed warriors walking across your planet. This is a different type of dogman that was not a natural inclusion into our circle. Not to say that we did not have our genetic engineering of our own and our adaptations of our own, but your military-industrial complex wishes to make better soldiers, you would say, that have the ability of our level of strength and our level of capability. So they created in their labs a form of bulletproof vest, so not even your strongest human with the strongest weapon could penetrate our hides. This is you would say, a natural adaptation that was given to us by your earthly realm, but then accentuated by your cabal laboratories.
So when the cabal laboratories also accentuated, as you said, the hide, is that something now that genetically in reproduction that is now passed down to the next generation as a normal part of their physiology?
Indeed, but it is only within certain circles. We do welcome our brethren in no matter where they come from or how they came in to this world. However, we will not tolerate the misuse of our DNA very much longer on your kind, by your kind. Your kind injects this into themselves and creates a stronger soldier. They were trying to prevent the transformative capabilities that some of our kind have that began to shapeshift from one form to the other. However, this was not something that was doable, you would say. This was a natural melding between the human kind and the Antiqua kind. It is the energies that your planet exists in, the planetary pulls, the pulls of your moon and sun and stars that made it possible for this transformative capability. They just wanted the strength of our kind and not the look, but they got the look and they got the bulletproof vest as a result.
And again, those of your kind that were unfortunately or are currently unfortunately a part of these programs, they are kept under great guard. I mean, you would never want to see one of them escape to reintegrate back into their own, where that genetics would start passing down. So I would make an assumption, just like with other groups, if they weren't easily controlled in some fashion, if they weren't able to be controlled, they would be terminated.
Indeed, your cabal also captured those people with ancient DNA lines that had the propensity of transformation. They wanted the balance of both sides so that they could control and maintain this bloodline. This did not work right away, and they did have to terminate several adaptations of this genetic code. But one strain that was both in your native cultures and in your Germanic cultures, you would say, are werewolves. These are fewer and far between, but these are more the naturally adaptive hybrids that walk the face of your earth, and these are the people that your military-industrial complex have been trying to find to gain the genetics from, so they can continue to create their hybrid soldiers.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, and I'm going to just deviate. And again, it's more of a curiosity, and I'm not going to say this because I'm the first person that has said this out loud. But I do find it interesting on tactics that are used. I watch strategies and I find it fascinating. So wouldn't it be interesting that if you had to try to look for something in a populace, how you would make DNA testing for ancestral purposes, readily and easily available to really maybe scan the populace for what they're looking for.
Indeed, you are most astute. These tests that you see worldwide, they are looking for different DNA traits, not only for your Rh negative traits, of which are most coveted by the dark ones, but other DNA traits such as hybrid dogmen, people with Sasquatch DNA codes, Syrian DNA codes for the sexual circles, and various other traits like your Anunnaki traits, the long skulls, being the good factions thereof, and yes, there were good factions thereof, and many other DNA traits that they feel they can use in their laboratories, that they could filter out one DNA and use another. You would call this a more Mengele technique or Nazi technique. They do observe this. They believe by improving their genetics, by filtering out what they consider to be recessive, they are the master race. And this is furthest from the truth, because they themselves are lacking in particular genome and amino acids that make them vulnerable to particular diseases on your world that you yourselves are not vulnerable to. This is why they lock themselves in bunkers and hang out in the depths of space, because they are terrified of what Earth is brewing in their absence.
And it's an interesting thing, again, how we always say there's a little bit of trickery involved. You voluntarily decide that you want to participate in something like this. The free will adaptation to that is that apparently, it's my humble opinion, that you've probably unwittingly volunteered to anything they want to do to you afterwards with that information. So
Yes,
you could
indeed.
be put into programs, you could be, put into certain testing by particular races or whatever that are investigating something, and you've unwittingly now volunteered to be a part of that. So if you're hearing me now and you've done something like that, I certainly would revoke any entanglements to any perceived consent to anything regarding that. I hope you will consider doing that.
Yes, they do it this way quite often. This is why they advertise these services quite frequently. People are curious about their family lines, and for good reason. They are picking up on things that they know nothing about. It is within their genetic memory, their past lives, and their soul history. They are beginning to know where they came from, or wanting to know where they came from. So, to take advantage, these genetic testing departments of your cabal and military industrial complex have made an array of different services that will show a limited family history without all the alien coding in there, but yet they can read the alien coding and know exactly what they can fish out by abducting your kind into their programs. This is a practice that is soon to end in the next decade or so in your planning on this world, by some of your good factions that are in the background that people know nothing about. They think they know what is going on in the background, but they do not. This is also another thing. The Dark Anunnaki want your metals and gold as well. This is why you see those other commercials that are on for gold harvesting. This goes the same for the genetics. It is all right in front of your eyes on your very television, but people see it as either annoying commercials or tabloid-like scenarios. However, the truth is actually being presented to you on a silver platter, most literally.
Exactly. So I know we deviated a little bit, specifically talking about, Dogmen, but it's important, to understand part of the reason why Chris and I are also so interested in having communications is that we are going to get to hear their perspective on many things and be able to collaborate on our own particular thoughts to try to get a better picture of what's really going on in, again, the seen and unseen parts of our society, and it's very important. I think we've been talking a while. I think maybe the next time we talk, we should probably get into the realities of what's going on between the groups of your race and ours that are beginning to interact, because again, it could it could make you, again, whatever your current interaction is, you're going to make an assumption it's the entire race. And so some of the interactions that have been occurring have been scary, and unpleasant for humans. And, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about how we can understand and respect each other better, because those ones that we are interacting with have the same primal fears that we have. And so you get, two particular groups together that are in a kind of fearful, I need to protect kind of state or whatever, and you're just automatically set up for misunderstandings and unfortunate conflicts. So we probably need to start talking about what people are experiencing now and then help them grow in understanding to know how to respect these races. So I'm going to obviously just turn it over to you for any last words.
Just know that the world in which you live on, this little blue globe, as you say, is far more vast than you could ever imagine. You have allies in the shadows, and you have demons in the light, let's just say, that complicate matters in one area and enrich in another. You have allies out there that wish for your salvation, but do not interfere with your growth, at least not very much. Then you have ones that wish too much for their own salvation through you. Know that the world in which you exist on, and our kind of the dogmen you call us, exist right next to you in your woods and in your forests and in your caves and in your mountains, along with a plethora of many other races, being as you would call demons and witches and warlocks and trolls. Well, a few of them are trolls, but I digress in this. That you are coming into an age now where you are growing out of your adolescence and beginning to see the world as more of an adult. We do not say this as an unkind thing. We are saying this as an energetic, factual thing, as well as your genetics and your enlightened functions, or energy functions, you would say, forgive the English, but you are coming into your own. You are your own event at this moment. You have the ability to make a choice, whether to go one way or another, or meld things together, see things as one. We prefer the oneness and the unity. We can sense your moods, and we can sense your agitations, and we can sense your prayers, and we can sense when you wish to harm us and when you wish to communicate with us. Know this when you enter our realms into the forest and that of the forest people. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ooh. Very bright. Ooh. Oh yeah, he must have something wrong with his left eye or something, because there's like, I don't know if he has something in it or something, but yeah, his left eye isn't as acute.
Oh, okay.
Like he was damaged or something, or he has some scarring or something, because he couldn't see very well out of this one.
Okay.
Yeah, he says that's true. Like there's like, I don't know if he was shot at or something, but he has like a wound or something here. Or if he was wounded by Draco or something, or some kind of claw. I don't know what went on there, but there's something wrong with his eye. I didn't see that before. Maybe it happened between the Interstellar Council episode and now, but they do have the propensity to be, not propensity, but they do have the ability to be injured too. Mm-hmm. Even though their molecules move faster. If they're caught by surprise, excuse me,
well,
when I'm channeling this happens.
He was saying certain technologies, they're not, they're vulnerable to certain things.
Yes, yes, they are vulnerable to certain things, especially if it gets them in the eye. So that they're making that point, that they may be much stronger than us, mm-hmm. but just because we're smaller in size doesn't mean we won't have the ability to take one of them down. Mm-hmm. And the same goes with the forest people. So they're cautiously bringing their dialogue forward, and there are several of them of several different sizes and colors here. Kodo is like a grayish color, like a grayish black, kind of like how my beard has like the salt and pepper look. That's how he looks. Mm-hmm. And he has, I believe, a brother or a child or somewhere near him that is brown and white, like a cow patch looking one, kind of like we would have a cat, you know, and have the yeah, they have that. He has that look, or excuse me, sister. You're a sister. I don't see female ones very often. A little more pushed in face with a smaller nose, with kind of like a white fluff hair, very soft feeling. And there was a couple children running around that looked like stuffed animals, but that you just want to go to them, you know, but like a puppy. They are a puppy, I know. Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah.
That was a puppy.
In case you hadn't noticed, Kodo does that stuff. But there's several of them up in the hills and everything here. The forest people, even though they're trying to reestablish the neutral zone here, they're letting them in. They're very much like themselves. Granted, they're like they said, there was a rivalry between them, but it looks like they're actually beginning to mend fences, very old fences. So that's actually good to see. So I think this is a good stopping point. Thank you, everybody, for watching this first episode of the World of Dogmen. We have plenty more information to come. We will focus on each individual one of these topics for future episodes. Even though this one was kind of a conglomeration, this gives you an idea of the platform we are working from versus what others have been working from other angles. So we hope you enjoy. Bye-bye now.
Bye, guys.